connected government instead of siloed MDAs. The Transformation Implementation Unit, lovingly called TIU, has also partnered with 4 ministries to implement systems to improve the way they deliver key services. A customer relationship management system was implemented at the Passport, Immigration and Citizenship Agency of the Ministry of National Security. This has been having a positive impact on customer service in terms of what it does. IRIFINS, a web-based fisheries licensing and registration system for fisheries and fisher farm, was implemented at the National Fisheries Authority. And I'm sure Minister Green will speak more on this in his sectorial. These are examples of the work of the TIU, IRIFIN, at the Ministry of Labour and Social Security. The Transformation Implementation Unit has supported the ministry to develop an effective and user-friendly web-based work permit system to improve the processing of work permit and CARICOM skills certificate. And I am sure Minister Charles will speak more fulsomely to this. Madam Speaker, the Transformation Implementation Unit is particularly proud of the partnership with the Child Protection and Family Services Agency to modernize its ICT infrastructure. The CPFSA can now boast a unified network built on modern, secure, and robust technology. Still on the ICT front, MyHR, an integrated HR and payroll management system, is the first enterprise system successfully deployed in the public sector. It is now being used by approximately 70 ministries, departments, and agencies, which is putting the government on a path to better managing its most critical resource, which is people. Madam Speaker, employees can now access their records anytime to ascertain information such as leave balances, status of requests for approval, and their payslip. They no longer need to go to HR to access this information. And Madam Speaker, we have been able to address some of the residual issues of the new compensation system because we have more automation in place. And I'm pleased to report to this Honourable House that we have agreed 2 key policies with the union, one for work done outside of normal working hours, and the other for the provision of uniform allowances. In the upcoming fiscal year, we will implement a new phase of the public sector transformation program to build on the gains made in phase 1. Phase 2 will focus more on digital transformation, continuing to ensure the requirements for increased productivity in the public sector are in place. We eagerly look forward to the commencement of this program. Madam Speaker, transformation a few thing, and we're making strides. Madam Speaker, support to self-financing public bodies of $27.8 billion is in the budget, of which $11 billion are allocated to JUTC, Bombay Metro, $10 billion to the National Water Commission, $900 million to the Transport Authority, and $210 million to the Jamaica Commodity Regulatory Authority, JACRA. That's in the budget, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, let me pause to say that the $10 billion allocation to the National Water Commission was the easiest yes for me. I remember as a child in Ty-Dixon that we either had to have a tank in our yard or a drum to catch rainwater in order to have water for cooking, bathing, washing our clothes, and all the other things we do with water. Madam Speaker, even though we had a tank in our yard, the tank leaked, and so unless rain fell heavily, the tank was generally dry. Madam Speaker, I remember many school mornings in order to tidy up to go to primary school, that as children, me, my younger brother and sister, and other children in Ty-Dixon had to go to the one government public tank to catch water in a pan, put the pan of water, yes. I know. So, Madam Speaker, yes, in order to tidy up to go to primary school, that as children, we had to go to the one and only government public tank to catch water in a pan, put the pan of water on our heads with a cutter under it, to keep it steady in order for us to have water to use before we go to school. And, Madam Speaker, we could not be late for school either. I know that this may still be happening in some rural communities. And so when I say it was the easiest yes in terms of the $10 billion to NWC, it is because I lived the experience of an ordinary Jamaican. An ordinary Jamaican in rural Jamaica, in Ty-Dixon, and I know the hidden hopes and dreams of ordinary Jamaicans. They want running water in their bathrooms, in their kitchens, and available for them when they need it. Madam Speaker, this government will continue to work to make that happen for every Jamaican household. So, Madam Speaker, recently I gave my strongest endorsement to the PPP, Public-Private Partnership, that Prime Minister and Minister Samuda signed with the various partners to build the Rio Cobre water treatment plant at a cost of US $77 million or 12 billion Jamaican to bring an additional 15 million gallons of water to benefit Jamaicans. The deal was criticized for having an interest rate that to those who do not have the responsibility of contemplating and planning the future of Jamaica, that interest rate seems high. When I heard those comments, I WhatsApped Minister Samuda and I said, I will defend this project anytime, because the issue in 3 or 4 years' time, when water is needed, as the population in Kingston and St. Andrew and in our 15th parish, Portmore, grows. At that time, in 3 or 4 years' time, the issue will be water versus no water, not high versus low interest rates. Madam Speaker, I know the hidden hopes and dreams of ordinary Jamaicans for a better life. Our commitment is to continue creating the pathway for that better life. So, Madam Speaker, approximately 2.1 billion, of which 1.1 billion is allocated to the Ministry of Labour and Social Security to provide individual grants of $20,000. That is in the budget. Prime Minister will speak to this in his budget presentation. He announced this at that special conference, remember, back in November of 2024 at the National Arena. That is in the budget, Madam Speaker. There's $1 billion to the Ministry of Science, Energy, Technology and Transportation to support a program dealing with the alleviation of energy poverty. That is in the budget, and I will speak more to that shortly. Restoration and maintenance of major corridors and gullies program at $4.6 billion is in the budget. Our Prime Minister will speak to the specifics of this. And there is $1.96 billion to support the holding of general elections within That is in the budget, Madam Speaker. The payment of principal amounts of $1.5 billion on NHT arrears of approximately $2.5 billion, which includes penalty of $1.3. These arrears were incurred by the ministry responsible for education. That is in the budget. Subvention of $1.7 billion to the University Hospital of the West Indies to address new salary rates and arrears for medical consultants, as well as filling of technical staff position. That is in the budget. UTEC, obviously, Madam Speaker, I can't list every single thing that is in the budget, but to say to UTEC, you are in the budget.
Set the record straight. Real record.
Madam Speaker, I know that DBJ is a public body in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation that channels financing to MSMEs as well as to large projects in order to drive economic growth and development. It will continue to pursue innovative means of mobilizing funding and leveraging private sector investment and expertise through its venture capital program, as well as public-private partnerships and privatization transaction. Madam Speaker, $2 billion is in the budget for DBJ to allow them to continue to facilitate sustainable growth of startups and MSMEs. And to continue support women-led initiatives, entrepreneurship training, including digital skills bootcamp. $2 billion is in the budget for DBJ, Madam Speaker, for MSMEs. We have to commend our MSMEs. The latest figure from the Small Business Association of Jamaica is that there were an estimated 422,000 registered small businesses in Jamaica, generating, and get this figure, 80% of the jobs in the Jamaican economy. This means 1,136,240 persons in our workforce are employed by a micro, small, or medium enterprise. In the picture on the screen, Mr. Headley and his egg farm is one such DBJ, one such person who DBJ assisted to expand his farm. Madam Speaker, the top concerns for small businesses that I hear repeated over and over again, and Minister Hill will tell you as well, is access to financing, and not just plain vanilla access. They want equitable access to financing. They are also feeling the burden of high interest rates and have said to me that opening a bank account for their business is difficult. They feel there's no difference between the requirements for them as MSMEs as opposed to a very large institution. And so my commitment to them is to get together with the Minister Hill, to let us sit down with the banks and see how we can agree to reduce the burden of opening a bank account for MSMEs. Madam Speaker, recently, as a government, we listened to the new car dealership industry. They said that 100% bond on the duties they pay ties up too much of their capital. Madam Speaker, Jamaica imported some 50,786 motor vehicles worth $81 billion in 2022. And if you look at the duties are between 67 to about 88% of the value. And if you assume the lowest duty, you can see that the capital tied up against the duties is significant. We listened to the industry, and now, instead of 100% bond against the duty, we have reduced that to 20%.
Very nice.
This frees up capital to invest in other businesses or to expand existing businesses, hire more people, and contribute to economic growth. That was not a call on the budget. That was not a tax incentive. That represents this government listening and understanding the hurdles in the way of businesses and taking steps to reduce or eliminate those hurdles. Madam Speaker, on capital spending, the $62.6 billion proposed for capital expenditure in 25-26 will be spent by central government, and it includes a contingency provision for new public projects of $2.1 billion. Major infrastructure projects under implementation by the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation accounts for $30.6 billion, or 49% of the capital spending across central government. And I am sure the Prime Minister can't wait to speak to his plans for roads and more roads and parks and more parks. That is in the budget. Other ministries are in receipt of significant capital expenditure allocation as well. Ministry of Health and Wellness, $10.2 billion is in the budget, including $5 billion for Cornwall Regional Hospital, $4.1 billion for the IDB-supported prevention and care management of non-communicable disease. That is in the budget. There's $4.6 billion in the budget for the Office of the Prime Minister, including $3 billion for NIDS. That is in the budget. And MSET, $4.5 billion is in the budget for MSET, including $3.2 billion for the procurement of new buses for JUTC. That is in the budget, and I'm sure Minister Vaz will speak to that. And there is much, much more in the budget for Ministry of Education, $4.2 billion, including $1.7 billion to the primary and secondary schools infrastructure project. That is in the budget. At the Ministry of Agriculture, $3.7 billion, and I am sure Minister Green can't wait to tell you about what he's doing for Essex Valley and Southern Plains. $3.7 billion is in the budget for agriculture under the capital program. And MNS, Ministry of National Security, you will 1.7 billion to continue construction of police divisional headquarters in Westmoreland and St. Catherine North. That is in the budget. I am sure, Madam Speaker, that you will agree with me after hearing those robust budget numbers for the various ministries that for an economy that has been so battered by a drought, by a Category 5 hurricane Beryl, by Tropical Storm Raphael, and rains, especially during the month of November and December, that were well above the 30-year average, that the word for this Jamaican economy and for the people of Jamaica, that word is resilient. Madam Speaker, we must continue to put in place everything that will bolster our resilience as a country and as a household. During the new fiscal year, we will bring to Parliament legislation for micro-insurance. Madam Speaker, not every Jamaican can afford the premiums for traditional insurance sold here in Jamaica, and so we have to meet the people where they are. Madam Speaker, micro-insurance legislation has been talked about, but I give my commitment that micro-insurance legislation will be passed in this new fiscal year. Madam Speaker, I believe that this will significantly improve financial inclusion once it comes into effect, and that our commitment when it comes into effect is to assess how we can help every PATH family access microinsurance to build financial resilience so that these vulnerable families can manage the financial impact of unexpected events such as illness, a death, loss of income, or natural disaster. Madam Speaker, one player in the insurance industry who is looking forward to seeing the legislation come into being estimates that it is possible to offer a micro-insurance policy with a premium of $250 per month. Not $2,500, but $250 Jamaican dollars per month for a $500,000 benefit. That is worth it, Madam Speaker, to assist the most vulnerable to build resilience. Of note, the FSC has indicated that it would welcome the completion of the microinsurance legislation, as it has been a work in progress. FSC said that it would increase insurance penetration in Jamaica through the expansion of access to insurance. This is how we help families build resilience, by creating affordable insurance products to assist them in times of need. Madam Speaker, there are many other pieces of legislation that we must pass in this Parliament in this upcoming fiscal year. The income tax, large-scale projects and pioneer industry will be repealed and replaced as a means of updating the legislation to ensure that it is fit for purpose. The work is significantly advanced for this. If you look at the history of this, it was enacted in December of 2023, but it has not been able to take effect just yet because there had to be some significant rework. By Cabinet Decision number 38/19, dated December 2, 2019, the Cabinet granted approval for the issuance of drafting instructions to the Chief Parliamentary Council to amend this Act. We have been working on it, Madam Speaker. Given the vast economic benefits that the Act is intended to achieve for Jamaica, it is imperative that the Act finally be operational so that the country can reap the rewards from the framework that it established to support large investments and economic development. There is one investment that is waiting for this act to be passed, and that is the Harmony Cove Limited Development Project. This investment in Jamaica will be $1 billion. We will bring this legislation to Parliament before the end of this fiscal year. This investment is too huge to wait another day. Madam Speaker, phase 2 of the private pension reform process, referred to as the adequacy phase, seeks to address issues such as the locking in of members' compulsory contributions, vesting of members in relation to benefits derived from the employer's contributions, portability of pension benefits, and allowance for dependent disability pension. This phase 2, Madam Speaker, has been talked about and dreamt about for a very, very long time. I can recall during my private sector days more than 15 years ago that I was part of several pension working groups. Pension phase 2 is important, and so I will prioritize this legislation in this upcoming fiscal year. Madam Speaker, in order to continue the innovation in our financial sector, we will quickly pass the Virtual Asset Service Provider Bill legislation, a critical piece of legislation which is not just a regulatory necessity, but an economic imperative for the future of Jamaica. The bill represents a pivotal step in modernizing our financial sector, ensuring our compliance with international financial regulations, and positioning Jamaica as a leader in fintech innovation within the Caribbean. Madam Speaker, Jamaica must pass this Virtual Asset Service Provider Bill to ensure compliance with the Financial Action Task Force, FATF Recommendations 15 and 16. Our financial system must meet global standards on anti-money laundering, AML, counter-terrorism financing, CFT, and the prevention of proliferation financing, PF. This legislation establishes a robust legal and regulatory framework for virtual asset service providers, ensuring that those businesses operate within strict licensing, supervision, and enforcement guidelines. Madam Speaker, beginning with this budget speech, and I will announce shortly, will be the start of our initiatives to encourage local taxpayers to bring home to Jamaica their business income and business activities, including associated businesses and employment, as well as investment holdings that have been established in or transferred to other tax jurisdictions. A Cabinet submission detailing this will be in front of Cabinet shortly for its consideration. And Madam Speaker, I have to be true to the financial sector. In all our contemplations, Madam Speaker, we have to engage with the financial sector around the vexed issue of the asset tax, which they were told by the other side would be temporary. Some ideas have come to me from the financial sector on how we could begin to scale this back. I gave a commitment to review them and work with the sector on this issue. And there are many other ideas that came to me from the financial sector with regards to new products, efficiencies, and so on. And I will begin that engagement with the financial sector.
Yeah.
Madam Speaker, the Student Loan Bureau has gone through many changes, making itself more efficient and more service-oriented. It is working to move itself to another level, a higher level, with a new and improved customer platform, which should have been launched in 2022, but is now targeted for the first quarter of the new fiscal year 2025-26. This platform will allow students to view their loans, print statements, and pay their loans online, among other functions. The SPL reported to me that the biggest challenge that students have been complaining about is accessing the information about their loans. However, as the student loan says that once their platform is launched, students will see significant improvement in efficiencies. Madam Speaker, during the 23-24 fiscal year, the decision was taken by this government to no longer require PATH beneficiaries to have a guarantor, and PATH beneficiaries would have a 100% waiver for application fees. Since then, there has been an 85% increase in the number of PATH beneficiaries in 2024-25 versus the figure in 2023. Madam Speaker, I want to put on record this government's commitment to improving the offerings from the Student Loan Bureau by the beginning of the school year in September 2026. A Capri study has given us excellent suggestions on how to modernize the student loan offerings. We are committed to doing the overhaul of the student loan system and will engage Capri as we start that process this upcoming fiscal year. But so, Madam Speaker, to let Jamaicans know our headspace and where we're heading, we are committed to an increase in the loan amounts that students will be able to access, and for the disbursement to include not just tuition, but also housing, books and supplies, the cost of a laptop, and a stipend for meals. We are also committed to a meaningful reduction in interest rates on the various loans, and we are committed to longer loan payment periods. As you can see, Madam Speaker, these would be significant changes to how the Student Loan Bureau operates currently. And so we have to work with the Student Loan Bureau to be able to launch these initiatives for the new school year starting September 2026. It's going to take time to implement these changes. The student loan is building bridges and transforming dreams. But while we wait for those changes, this government, through the Student Loan Bureau, will be offering to new students a longer repayment period of 10 years instead of the current 7 and 5 years. And the rates will remain the same, meaning the rates will not increase because the payment period has increased. We are starting with that one step, Madam Speaker, and will work rapidly to ensure the systems are in place to roll out the new loan offerings to make the lives of our tertiary students better and allow them to focus on attaining their educational goals to benefit themselves, their families, and Jamaica as a whole. The student loan is building bridges and transforming dreams. Madam Speaker, You may recall that earlier I highlighted the $2 billion that is in the upcoming budget for the DBJ for on-lending for many small businesses. In addition to that, Madam Speaker, we're also raising the GCT exemption for small businesses from $10 million to $15 million. So in addition to all the items I listed that are in the budget, which was good news number one, and the work that the Student Loan Bureau will be doing to improve the offerings, which was good news number two, raising the exemption from 10 million to 15 million for MSMEs is good news number three. Madam Speaker, as we accelerate the pace of economic growth in Jamaica, accelerated capital allowance is one strategy that this government will use to move growth to a higher level. In general, as businesses know, because they currently get capital allowance on specific capital expenditure, like industrial buildings, plant and machinery, and information technology equipment, it is a tax relief to the companies because they would be allowed to deduct some portion of the cost from their taxable profit over time. This deduction, the capital allowance deduction, reduces the company's overall tax liability and provides a fiscal incentive for business growth and business investment. Madam Speaker, as a government, we would like to see greater investments among our companies. And so we are making a special provision for accelerated capital allowance on industrial and non-industrial commercial buildings, plant and machinery, which includes automatic data processing equipment. And this will be over a 2-year period. We will publish that schedule. It is kind of too detailed to read out right now, but suffice it to say, it gives significant accelerated capital allowance over a 2-year period. And so we are encouraging companies to take the opportunity to upgrade their machinery, their ITC infrastructure, their industrial buildings, to help expand their output so that we can move the GDP growth rate to higher levels. So as an example, Madam Speaker, for plant and machinery, currently the initial capital allowance is 25% over the initial year is 25%. The period for the capital allowance for machinery is 8 years under the current regime. So the annual capital allowance will be 12.5%. We are moving that to 40% in year one. Yes. So the details, Madam Speaker, will be published for the companies. And that is good news number 4. Madam Speaker, this government believes in the stock market to create prosperity for the people of Jamaica.
Like someone wanted to lock it down.
Yeah. If you recall, Madam Speaker, the Honorable Edward Seaga inaugurated the Jamaica Stock Exchange in 1969 as the Minister of Finance and Planning. The Jamaica Stock Exchange was one of the many financial institutions that the former Prime Minister and Minister of Finance created to help Jamaica's capital market. Madam Speaker, history recalls that he took part in the first transactions by purchasing shares through two brokers. History also recalls that he wrote up the transaction on the board. If you look on the screen, you'll see the picture where the exchange dealings were recorded. In those days, we did not have the kind of technology we have today. Mr. Seaga's goal for the stock exchange were to help companies in Jamaica by opening up the capital market to allow Jamaican investors to participate in these companies, to enable private companies to go public. On February 1, 2008, this government clearly continued its strong support for the stock market as a whole. But more important, for the establishment of a junior stock exchange. I go further, Madam Speaker. It was this government, under the leadership of the Honorable Bruce Golding, that facilitated the launch of the junior market on April 1, 2009. Sadly, Madam Speaker, despite the clear success and the positive impact of the junior market, we witnessed the shock wave when the then Finance Minister announced in this Parliament on October 12, 2013, that his government would phase out the Jamaica Stock Exchange junior market benefit in 8 years. In opposition, in 2013, the shadow spokesman on finance, MP Audley Shaw, clearly stated the intention on October 2, 2013, not to shut down the JSE's junior market. In April 2016, as soon as the then Minister of Finance and the Public Service, Minister Audley Shaw, at the time, as soon as he took his seat at the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service, he restored the incentives in the format it was. Today, Madam Speaker, the junior market companies have paid over $1 billion of statutory deductions, 1.6 billion of GCT, and 1.6 billion of PAYE. And, Madam Speaker, as soon as the chart comes up on the screen, you would see that those junior market companies have raised in the equity market $20.2 billion. Madam Speaker, I cringe to think that many of those companies would be non-existent if we on this side did not fight for the junior market to remain in place. On January 14, 2025, I brought the legislation to Parliament to expand the junior market benefits that former Minister Clark had announced during his budget speech in March 2024. The amendment to the Income Tax Act increased the cap on voting share equity from 500 million to 750 million. Today, Madam Speaker, March 11, 2025, this government remains faithful to the stock market development and is pleased to announce its acceptance of the Jamaica Stock Exchange's proposal to establish a JSE micro market. I will move with haste to name the Technical Working Committee that will include the Companies Office of Jamaica, the Legal Fraternity, the Security Dealers Association, a member of the PSOJ, and of course, representatives from the JSC and Ministry of Finance and the Public Service. We fully expect that a fully functioning micro-market will put structure to more businesses in Jamaica for sustainability and growth and access to equity capital. We will begin these meetings of the Technical Working Committee as soon as we start the new fiscal year. Madam Speaker, Dr. Marlene Street Forrest, Managing Director of the Stock Exchange. She's in the gallery, and she has indicated that the JSE has identified over 250 micro and small businesses in Jamaica that are in need of equity funding and are reasonably organized but unable to go public because they're not yet at the level to meet the requirements of the main or the junior market. And many do not require the threshold of $50 million in participating equity capital, meaning the JSE micromarket would be established, Madam Speaker, to meet the needs of MSMEs in the 10 million to less than 50 million in participating equity capital. Madam Speaker, it will be a joy to see the first of these 250 micro and small businesses listed on the Jamaica Stock Exchange micro market not too long from now. And Madam Speaker, just in case anyone tries to say that they were the first with this idea of the micro market, let me remind them that I spoke at the 2025 JSE conference in Jamaica ahead of the opposition and publicly stated this government's intention to work with the JSE to establish the micro market. I'm moving now to formalize that process. Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, this government has utilized the stock market to monetize government assets. We have IPO'd Wigton Wind Farm, now Wigton Energy, when I was Minister of Science, Energy and Technology. Now we are in the local stock market again with another offering, which is the government's 20% share of Trans-Jamaica Highway. The offer opened on March 4th and will close on March 18th. Madam Speaker, I don't have a license to sell securities, and so this is not a sales pitch. This is to demonstrate to Jamaicans that we walk the walk and talk the talk when we say we believe in the stock market in Jamaica. Trans-Jamaica Highway is the concessionaire of Highway 2000 East-West, Jamaica's first toll road. Its core business activity is the development, operation, and maintenance of the toll network in Jamaica. Jamaica serves an expansive customer base with an average of 70,000 vehicles daily and peaks of approximately 100,000 during the Christmas period. Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, the government is seeking to raise up to $6.3 billion through the offer of 1,750,700,000 ordinary shares at Jamaican $3.60. Right? And NROC has reserved the right to upsize the offer by an additional 750 million ordinary shares in the event of oversubscription. All we know is you have to get there before Tuesday, March 18, 2025, in order to get some of these shares. Madam Speaker, this government will continue to incubate and bring to the market sound investments for the people of Jamaica to create their prosperity. And that, Madam Speaker, is good news number, you keep in track? Good news number 5, right. And Madam Speaker, the financial sector has given me many more ideas, but those ideas will require a sit down with them to understand everything that needs to be understood about those ideas. On the issue of dividends, Madam Speaker, in Jamaica we've had a difference in the tax rate on dividends for resident companies and individuals, so which is 15%, and for non-resident companies and non-resident individuals, it is 33 1/3 and 25% respectively. We are pleased, Madam Speaker, to announce that there will be one rate for resident and non-resident companies and individuals of 15%. I want to say to Jamaicans, when you hear non-resident companies and non-resident individuals, don't immediately think foreign companies or foreign individuals. They may also be companies registered abroad that are owned by Jamaicans. There are also Jamaican individuals who live abroad in countries that have lower dividend rates, that receive dividends from Jamaican companies. This benefit is one way to say to those Jamaicans who have companies abroad in jurisdictions with lower dividend tax rate than what currently prevails. We are saying to them, we are lowering the rate for you. Bring your capital back to Jamaica. And that is good news number 6. Good news number 6. So, Madam Speaker, again, to remind persons of the good news so far. Good news number 1 is what was in the budget for all our ministries. Good news number 2 is the immediate benefit to our tertiary students in terms of a longer payment period. Good news number 3, the $2 billion to TBJ for lending to MSMEs. Good news number 4, increasing the GCT threshold for MSMEs from 10 to 15 million. Good news number 5, accelerated capital allowance for any sized business. Good news number 6 is the launch of the JSC's micro market. Good news number 7, a dividend-paying investment opportunity, Trans-Jamaica Highway. Good news number 8, reduced tax rate on dividends received by non-resident companies from 33.33% to the same as the local rate, which is 15%. Good news number 9, reduced tax rate on dividends received by non-resident individuals from 25% to the same as the local rate, which is 15%. And good news number 10, Madam Speaker,
Full of good news.
there is more good news. Madam Speaker, everyone knows Minister Vaz is in charge of the electricity players in the industry, and he answers to Jamaicans for anything that goes wrong in the sector. He not only answers to Jamaicans, he advocates for Jamaicans. Remember the aftermath of burial? We were tired of hearing and seeing Minister Vaz calling on JPS to restore electricity. This should tell you, Madam Speaker, that Minister Vaz and this entire Prime Minister Holness-led administration wants an efficient electricity industry, one that is able to deliver the lowest electricity costs possible to the Jamaican people and the business. Madam Speaker, together with the Ministry of Science, Energy and Technology and Transportation, and following on the announcement the Prime Minister made at the National Arena, and we all remember what event that was, that this government will restructure GCT on electricity to make electricity more affordable and give those who want legal access to electricity the opportunity to do so. Today, Madam Speaker, we are pleased to announce that the commitment to reduce the GCT rate on electricity to 7% and eliminate the 150 kilowatt threshold for postpaid residential consumers is on track for implementation by the JPS starting on May 1, 2025.